2 years ago, I was just David Harper, a 37-year-old Marine surveyor living in Willow Cove, North Carolina, trying to piece my life back together after a brutal divorce that left me financially and emotionally wrecked. My only solace was my grandfather's 1943 Navy boat, Freedom's Echo, a weathered vessel that carried his legacy as a World War II engineer. It was my sanctuary, the one place where I could sip coffee at dawn and feel connected to him, to something bigger than my dwindling bank account and the $1,200 in credit I had left. But one crisp October morning in 2023, everything changed. 3 police cars screeched into my driveway, lights flashing like a scene from a crime drama, followed by the entire HOA board led by Margaret Voss, a woman whose name still sends a chill down my spine. She was waving a stack of papers, screaming about an emergency aesthetic violation and demanding I remove Freedom's Echo within 24 hours or face impoundment. I thought it was a joke, some overzealous neighbor throwing a tantrum over an old boat. I was dead wrong. The officer, a guy named Jenkins with a look that said he'd rather be anywhere else, muttered, "Look, man, this notice is bizarre, but I've got to enforce it." That's when it hit me like a rogue wave. This wasn't about the boat's paint job. They were trying to take it. My chest tightened, panic creeping in as I realized I was out of my depth. I knew boats' hulls, engines, structural integrity, but legal battles? HOA politics? I was a fish out of water. I'd already burned $900 on a rushed legal consultation, wiping out my checking account. The HOA slapped me with a $50 a day storage fee for Freedom's Echo, with no end in sight. My credit cards, already 80% maxed from the divorce, couldn't cover it. Within days, clients started bailing $5,000 and contracts gone because word spread I was the problem neighbor. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, my hands shaking every time I saw a uniform that reminded me of those cops. I called my sister, Sarah, my voice breaking. "They're taking Grandpa's boat, Sarah? I don't know how to stop this." I made every rookie mistake. I showed up to the HOA meeting armed with engineering reports and maritime preservation standards, thinking facts would win the day. Big mistake. Margaret shut me down with a sneer. "We're not here for a lecture on boat history, Mr. Harper." The room stared at me like I was reciting poetry in a foreign language. One woman, Mrs. Larson, actually dozed off during my spiel about deck joint integrity. I'd misread the game entirely. This wasn't about reason. It was about power. But as I left, defeated, Mrs. Larson slipped me a folded note, her eyes darting nervously. "Be careful, David," she whispered. "Things here aren't what they seem." In my truck, I opened it, and my blood ran cold. They did this to the Thompsons' shed last year. Victor Voss ended up with the land rights. "Meet me at 6 a.m. tomorrow at the old pier." Alone. That night, I barely slept, staring at the empty dock where Freedom's Echo used to sit, talking to Grandpa's photo like he could hear me. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this, Grandpa." But his Navy spirit burned in me, and I knew I had to fight. At dawn, I met Mrs. Larson at the pier, her face etched with worry. "David, what I'm about to tell you could get us both in trouble," she said. Before she could continue, footsteps echoed behind us. A shadowy figure emerged from the mist, and she shoved another note into my hand before hurrying off. It read, "They're watching you. Meet me tomorrow, same time, same place. Trust no one." My heart pounded. This wasn't just about my boat, it was something bigger, something sinister. Weeks later, I was drowning. My business had tanked by 40%, and I was surviving on Sarah's emergency fund, which I had no way to repay. I'd lost 20 pounds from stress, living on 1 meal a day, sleeping 3 hours a night. My DIY legal research was a mess, law library books full of jargon that might as well have been hieroglyphics. The boat storage debt hit $2,800, and they were threatening to auction Freedom's Echo. That's when I met James Carter, a retired maritime lawyer, at a Marina coffee shop. He took one look at my gaunt face and said, "You look like hell, son. What's going on?" When I told him about Grandpa's boat, his eyes softened. "My wife, Clara, fought a similar HOA battle. She died before we won. Maybe I can help you finish what she started." James and I dug into county records, hitting dead ends with repealed statutes and irrelevant precedents. Just when I was ready to quit, we found a 1992 subdivision amendment, misfiled and unratified, that showed the HOA's aesthetic rules were legally void. It was a small crack, but James called it our legal lifeboat. Meanwhile, Margaret was waging war, calling my clients with concerns about my stability, organizing secret chats to isolate me, and sending cease and desist letters from real lawyers. But I noticed her hesitate sometimes, staring at the empty dock with a flicker of doubt, like she wasn't sure why this fight had gone so far. James suspected Victor, her husband, was the real puppet master, using her pasta home loss to a developer scam a decade ago to fuel her need for control. Then came the bombshell. A boundary survey, funded by $2,000 from my retirement fund, revealed the Marina dock was mine, per a 1985 county error the HOA had known about since 2016, but hid to collect $32,000 a year in illegal fees from 14 families. Victor was leveraging this to pitch shady development deals to out-of-state investors. This wasn't just HOA overreach, it was fraud, maybe racketeering. Mrs. Larson handed me photos of Victor meeting developers at upscale restaurants, passing cash and Marina blueprints. My hands shook as I called James. This is criminal, James. They're stealing from everyone. But evidence meant nothing without strategy. Victor's tactics grew darker. My $3,000 GPS equipment was smashed, my truck tires slashed, and rumors spread about my mental breakdown. At a late-night dock confrontation, Victor, reeking of whiskey, growled, "You're playing with fire, Harper. People get hurt when they don't back off." I filed a police report, but he called it a misunderstanding. The worst came when my house was ransacked, and I found a photo of my ex-girlfriend, Emily, at her marine biology lab, a red X over her face, with a note, "Drop the case, or she disappears." Someone was watching us, knowing her routine. I was terrified, but I couldn't stop. At 15 months, my world collapsed. A mediation session backfired when Victor's lawyer produced fake engineering reports, painting me as an obsessive nutcase. Neighbors I'd counted on, like the Thompsons, backed out, scared of Victor's threats to their business. Emily gave me an ultimatum: choose me or this fight. Blinded by pride, I chose the fight, and she walked away. Sarah cut me off, saying, "Grandpa wouldn't want you to destroy yourself." Even James wavered, wondering if we were fighting a losing battle. Then Victor targeted Emily directly, confronting her at her lab with veiled threats. Her $10,000 research equipment was vandalized, and anonymous calls warned of accidents. Worst of all, Victor framed me for Marina vandalism, planting my business card and getting a restraining order. I was now the suspect, facing potential charges. At my lowest, surviving on vending machine snacks and sleeping in my office, I stared at Grandpa's photo, whispering, "Did I fight for you? Or is this just my ego?" James's blunt words saved me. Clara died fighting this kind of corruption. Don't let her death be for nothing. Blake's desperation means we're close. An anonymous tip revealed Victor's $200,000 gambling debts, explaining his reckless escalation. At 3 a.m., a text from an unknown number read, "Marina, now. Come alone, or Emily dies." I raced to the dock, finding Emily's car abandoned, her notes scattered, and a hidden compartment in Freedom's Echo I'd never noticed. Inside was a 1943 Navy deed and a note in Grandpa's handwriting. "If they try to take this land, check Vault 9. The truth is there." 18 months in, Victor's house of cards began to crumble. His gambling creditors, done with excuses, left him bruised and limping. His attempt to siphon HOA funds triggered bank fraud alerts, drawing the FBI, IRS, and SEC. Margaret, realizing Victor had gambled away community money, broke down and turned over bank records showing 3 years of embezzlement. Neighbors rallied back, 12 families now willing to testify. My business rebounded as clients admired my fight, and I paid back half of Sarah's loan. At a court auction, I bought the Marina rights for $1, the only bidder on a legally toxic asset. We turned the Marina into Freedom's Echo Community Marina, with transparent governance and free boating programs honoring Grandpa's legacy. The FBI set up a sting at a local restaurant. I wore a wire, playing along as Victor, in a cheap rental car and a fake Rolex, confessed to a $2.8 million Ponzi scheme, forged credentials, and tax evasion. Agents swooped in, cuffing him as diners filmed. His final taunt haunted me. Check your grandfather's boat, Harper. The real treasure's not the Marina. Back on Freedom's Echo, I found Grandpa's hidden World War II service records classified missions, bravery commendations he'd never shared, and a note explaining the boat was a gift from veterans to ease his combat trauma. Victor's treasure wasn't money but the boat's profound legacy, which he'd hoped to exploit. Victor got 8 years in prison, a lifetime development ban, and $1.2 million in restitution. Margaret, through therapy and 300 hours of community service, earned redemption, her name cleared from the Marina's banned list. The David Harper Act passed, mandating HOA transparency and felony penalties for fraud, protecting countless families. Susan and I got engaged on the dock, planning a spring 2026 wedding. The Freedom's Echo Festival draws crowds yearly, celebrating our victory and inspiring others to fight corruption. Today, on Freedom's Echo, watching the sunset, I'm grateful for the fight that taught me justice is worth everything. But questions linger. Was Victor just a con man, or was someone bigger pulling his strings? Did Margaret know more than she admitted? Could you forgive someone who cost you everything but claimed they were a victim too? Share your thoughts below. Hit like if this story fired you up, and subscribe for more tales of ordinary people taking on impossible fights. What would you do if your legacy was at stake?